Thank you. All right. So tonight, I'm really excited about this. Tonight topic is about a career evolution model for a migrant worker in New Zealand. I think many of us are not from New Zealand originally, including myself. As migrants, we often encounter a range of challenges or obstacles in our workplace. It could be cultural differences. This is the page, right? It could be cultural differences, how you would adjust to the local community, local communication styles, and navigate to the cultural nuances, how to build trust very quickly while trying to fit into the team. Maybe language barrier, as someone already suggested from the beginning, shared with us. You know, when language, English is not your first language, how to articulate yourself and make yourself understood well. It could be, quite a difficulty for many of us at the very beginning when coming to a foreign country. So sometimes it could be quite a daunting experience to write professional emails or business cases. And some might even experience prejudice or discrimination. And many of those could have a great impact on our career progression. So tonight we invited our guest speaker, Camy, who gonna share with us, based on her decade-long experience working in New Zealand, coming from a very different background herself. So she will share her journey with us and her strategies for tackling these challenges. Without further ado, let's welcome Camy. Camy, would you like to start with introduce yourself a little bit more?
I just learned how to unmute myself. I hope you all can hear me now. I will just share my screen now, going into slideshow. Cool. So I hope you all can hear me, see my screen. Cool. Thank you very much, Len, for the kind words and for the lovely introduction. Kia ora koutou, namaste apsapiko, and hello all. My name is Camy Bhandari, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And thank you very much for inviting me to your lovely community to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about. So this talk is divided into 3 parts. We'll kick off talking about my background and my motivation for doing this talk. And then I'll present you my migrant tech career evolution model, which is based on my decade-long experience of navigating New Zealand tech companies and building a career here for myself. And then we'll conclude the presentation by talking about the key takeaways from this presentation. So before I present to you anything further, I would like to talk about my identity as a human who is Camy, the human. So I am a cis woman. If you don't know what cis means that I identify with the gender that was assigned to me at the time of my birth. I am also a person of color, of Indian ethnicity. I was born and raised in India, where I spent pretty much the first quarter of my life. I am able-bodied and I am neurodiverse. I am bilingual. Hindi is my native language and my first language, and English is my second language. Currently, I'm learning how to speak Maori, and I migrated to New Zealand in 2013. Here is my professional background. So I have a 4 years bachelor's degree in computer science engineering. I actually entered tech in India in 2011. I started working for one of the biggest Indian tech companies. And through that tech company, I got an opportunity in 2013 to move to New Zealand. So since 2013, which is pretty much a decade now, I have spent 90% of my tech career working for New Zealand banks. Honorable mentions to ANZ and BNZ, where I've spent half a decade each. I've also worked at Westpac, a startup, and consultancies. In my 9 to 5, I am a senior QA, or what we also call a quality engineering specialist, and I'm currently on a contract with BNZ. In the last decade in New Zealand, I have changed jobs 6 times, and I've worked with 8 different employers, which is why I feel like I borderline qualify to talk about how to navigate career in New Zealand. I'm also a tech community builder. I organize tech conferences, and a lot of the work that I do is through my startup, which I co-founded in 2022 with my co-founders, and it is called NZ Tech Rally. If you've never heard of NZ Tech Rally provides inclusive spaces for New Zealand software community to come together and grow together. We do this by organizing conferences, workshops, meetup groups. We also have a YouTube channel. So yeah, please check us out. As we are called NZ Tech Rally on YouTube and LinkedIn. So my motivation for this talk. Now, I migrated here back in 2013, like I told you, and as a non-native English speaker, a person of color, I have struggled. I'm used to not having role models who look like me or who come from a similar background as me, especially people in senior leadership, or even back when I started, even in middle management, it was really hard to see any Indians or Asians or like Maori people of color. So I have always struggled. And when it comes to role models, my philosophy is that you can't be what you can't see. So I always think that it's important for us to be able to see, and that inspires us to who we want to be like and what our actual human potential is. On a similar note, I have also found a severe lack of career playbook or how to build your career or navigate your career in New Zealand, especially for migrants or people of color or neurodiverse people or disabled people or people from LGBTQ community. Like that nuance, all those nuances are always missing. Majority of the mainstream career advice that we see on LinkedIn or on YouTube or we read online is usually assuming that you grew up in this country, you speak English, and you know how to navigate. So which is why I say no inclusion, because like when I read all of that stuff, I don't feel included. I want career advice from people who have traveled the same path as me, who have established themselves, who have overcome similar challenges, and they can hand me down a playbook. So because I have never had that over the last 10 years, I felt quite motivated to do this talk. But the biggest motivation for this talk actually came from close home. So my younger sister, she migrated to New Zealand last year, and she migrated here as a student. She's studying at AUT. She's just finished her course. And I saw her go through the exact same struggles and challenges that I had gone through 10 years ago. And it was a very tight and hard slap on my face to see my sister like 10 years later going through the same stuff. And then it got me thinking, what have I done to make other people's lives easier? Here is my sister, I can support her, but what about thousands of other migrant people who are coming here from drastically different cultures or from non-native English-speaking countries? How have I helped them? I have not created any career playbook, or I don't see myself as a role model yet. So hence all of that came together. So I have spent a good time of actually the first quarter of 2024 just preparing for this talk, writing blogs, and just kind of like developing the nuances so that I can keep evolving and keep talking about the migrant experience in tech, hence making our tech culture more inclusive for migrant workers. So without further ado, here is my tech career evolution model if you're a migrant. I have 5 stages in my career evolution model. Stage 1 is visa and employment, which is very straightforward. It's pretty much self-explanatory because if you do not have a valid visa, you cannot enter the country. Most of the migrants enter New Zealand as a within the skilled migrant category or as a student visa holder. Stage 2 is language and culture integration. Again, it is very straightforward. But unfortunately, this is where majority of the migrants spend a large amount of time. And this is where a lot of us struggle as well. We saw in the chat, language barrier and culture came up more than a few times. So we're going to spend a good part of this presentation and this talk talking about language and culture integration in New Zealand. Career progression, a lot of us do struggle with career progression. We also plateau in our careers. So we're also going to talk about career progression. Once you've gone through visa, employment, language, culture, integration, and career progression, then you kind of like mature to become a systems thinker. And once you start thinking about systems thinking, then you ascend to someone who can then start contributing to communities, build communities, and help other people. So this model is kind of like from top to bottom. So you ascend from stage 1 till stage 5. A lot of times you will oscillate you will go between several stages depending on where you are in your career and your personal life. But this is what I usually think has been my way or my path of navigating my career as a migrant in New Zealand. So now let's look at these stages in a little bit more detail. Visa and employment, like I said, it is very self-explanatory, but two things I really, really wanted to highlight in this category are finding an accredited employer and being tied down to an employer. What do I mean by finding an accredited employer? This is usually student visa holders. Like we said, a lot of migrants enter New Zealand as student visa holders. And when you're coming from overseas, when you come, like the novelty of moving to a new country and going to a university is very cool. But soon that novelty wears off when you realize that the competition to get in to a New Zealand company, especially at the entry level, is so incredibly hard. From what I've heard, because my sister is in this same boat, from what I've heard, it is far more easier for me as a senior individual contributor or a manager to switch job than it is for someone who is just starting out in their career. And I think that is mostly because majority of the New Zealand tech companies are not interested in hiring graduates or hiring entry-level people and training them up, because training takes a lot of investment from the organizations in the organization planning. So that is a systemic issue in New Zealand. New Zealand is also a small country. A lot of companies are very small scale companies. So they're just like really not interested. Again, not much can be done in this area, but I still wanted to highlight that systemic issue that exists in the New Zealand tech industry. Now, for people who do manage to find an accredited employer, a lot of times these employers are not very good. This is my personal story. When I first moved to New Zealand, the team that I ended up working for in my first year, my managers in those teams were just not really great people. They used my visa, which was tied to that company, as a leverage for a lot of things. And it was just a very desperate and a very shit situation to be in, to be honest. The thing is, majority of people do not have to go through these things, but there are a lot of migrants who do end up in this situation like me. And the best thing in this situation is just to do your time, get to work to residence visa, find another employer, or get to your residency, and then just like move on. Again, there are systemic biases, discrimination, and prejudice why this happens. Not much that people can do about it, but just be aware of it. And I just wanted to talk about it so that people know that this happens. Now, language and culture integration. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about in language and culture integration is culture shock. Culture shock is 100% real. Non-native English speakers and people coming from drastically different cultures than New Zealand culture will go through culture shock, and it will be harsh. It takes almost a year to get over the culture shock. Now, what helps with culture shock is just acknowledging that we all go through it. It is normal. We all go through it. But also, let's not downplay it, because culture shock combined with a history of mental illnesses or depression can be very, very serious for someone. So if you are going through culture shock, or if your family member or your friend or your colleague is going through culture shock, help connect them with other migrants. In these situations, it's really, really important to find people from similar background or people who have gone through the same journey as you, because they can actually give you some really, really pragmatic advice that can help you in your situation. Also, seek help. If you're a student in universities, there are counselors who can help you and guide you on this. If you have an employer, then majority of New Zealand companies have something called EAP, which is called Employee Assistance Program, through which you can get 2 to 3 free counseling sessions. Your company will pay it, and it's completely anonymous. If you are privileged, as my sister is, to have family in the country, then talk to your family. I actually spent a lot of time before my sister moved to New Zealand preparing her for the culture shock and how harsh it can be. So definitely talk to your friends and family. Cool. The other thing I wanted to cover in language and culture integration is the challenges that non-native English speakers face. From my several conversations with my several immigrant friends from all over the country, all over the world, articulation and thought formation can be really hard if English is not your first language. So when I first started out in 2013 in New Zealand, I had an older colleague who gave me an advice, and this was a Kiwi person and their wife was Chinese. So they were telling me about their wife's experience, and it's a cool story. So what they told me is that, Camy, one day you will get to a stage. They actually asked me if I think in Hindi and then I translate it to English and then I speak it in English. And I said, yes, I do that because English is not my first language, Hindi is. And even though I started learning English at a very young age, that is how India is, because India used to be a British colony. So kids start learning English under the age of 5, but still, because it's not our first language, people around us, our parents, they don't speak in English. So we are not as fluent. So my older colleague at that time, they gave me the advice that one day you will reach a stage where you will think in your head in English. That will just naturally happen. And when that happens, that's when you become fluent in English. And they were sharing the experience of their wife who didn't have English as a native speaker. I feel now I have reached that point, like 11 years later, now I have reached that point, but that has involved a lot of practice, like constantly practicing. I do sign up. I know public speaking is very, very scary, but I do sign up for public speaking from time to time. And the thing is, you can do so many things, but just talking in English for hours is one of the best things that has helped me. But also, it is normal. It is normal to thought form, to think in your head in your native language, and then to translate it into English. So I just wanted to kind of like give that example, just to kind of like, again, normalize it. One of the things that I have struggled in New Zealand is that we are expected to know Maori, which is really cool, but then there is no direct support for us on how to learn Maori as an immigrant or as a migrant. We do not have much exposure to the Maori language and Maori cultures outside of our organizations. And the reality is that majority of New Zealand tech organizations, they do not practice Maori speaking, or they do not even have Maori Pacifica people in their company who can teach us. So this has been my biggest struggle, the lack of Maori Pacifica people in tech, and then also companies not incorporating Maori values and Maori philosophies leaves no space for migrants or people like me who have no exposure to the Maori culture to actually learn the language faster. One of the discriminations and prejudice that I have faced, and I see almost all of the migrants go through, is assumption of incompetence or unintelligence because you cannot speak, because you're not fluent in English, or you can't speak English fast enough. Again, I wanted to highlight that this happens. What you can do is, if you see this happening to you, speak up if you can. If you're in a safe environment, speak up, raise it with your direct manager. If it's not a safe environment, then start working on an exit plan, like a 6-month exit plan or 1-year exit plan from that company, because you do not want to be working with employers like that. Cool. The last thing that I wanted to talk about in language and culture integration is that to fast track your language and culture integration, start learning New Zealand English. Again, what is New Zealand English? New Zealand English is not just quite English. New Zealand English has a lot of Kiwi slang. It also has a lot of phrases that only Kiwis understand. I know my American friends and Canadian friends also have difficulty understanding what those phrases are because they're very localized, Kiwi or Aussie reference. Also, New Zealand English also includes a lot of Maori words, like I've said. New Zealand English speakers usually speak very fast and they mumble a lot. And on a similar term, understanding what Kiwi culture is. My understanding of Kiwi culture is not very nuanced, I would say. It's been 11 years and I'm still understanding what Kiwi culture is, but from a very naive view, I think Kiwi culture is, again, it's very heavily influenced by white New Zealanders. It's lightly influenced by Maori culture, and then a combination of a few other things. So to integrate language and culture faster, we have to acclimate to New Zealand English and learn about Kiwi culture. But how do you do it? So if you're a migrant, I would encourage you to join communities like this, where we talk about these things. Also hang out with native English speakers. This is one of the tips that I gave to my sister, because this was my experience. When I first moved to New Zealand, I lived by myself for 6 months, and then I moved in with one of my Indian friends. And then a year later, I moved in with 2 Kiwi flatmates who were native English speaker. And I lived with them for 4 years, and I noticed that my English went to next level. And it was because I was living with people who were native English speakers. And by constantly practicing English with them for 4 years, that helped me increase my fluency in English. So if you have that opportunity, you should do it. My sister did that, and I think she's not as fluent as Kiwis in English. I mean, she's quite far away from there, but she can easily now understand the Kiwi accent, which she really struggled with within the first month. Also, do not be afraid to ask people to repeat themselves. Like I said, Kiwis speak really fast. They mumble a lot. As a non-native English speaker, it is hard for us to understand what they're saying. So do not be afraid at work, at university, or anywhere to ask people to repeat themselves. And also practice. Like I said, I think English is pretty much like math, swimming, or driving. And it pretty much applies to every language. Language proficiency only comes with practice. So find opportunities to speak in English and practice it. Now, moving on to career progression. So there are a few things that I wanted to cover in career progression. Salary and promotion conversations. I know with all the conversations that I've had with all of my immigrant friends from several different cultures, salary and promotion conversations are always really hard, especially if English is not your first language, if you are a migrant to this country, because you don't understand Kiwi culture, because you don't understand how your boss thinks or how your team works. So again, I wanted to highlight that this happens to all of us. I've had so many awkward salary and promotion conversations. I've had wrong expectations. The best thing to avoid these situations is just to be very clear, to always communicate with your reporting manager what you want, and set that precedent at the very start of your performance review year, so that when you actually get to the performance review time, there is no miscommunication. And always have things in writing. That is one of the things that has really worked with me as a non-native English speaker. My written English has always been far better than my verbal English, because, like I said, I started learning English very young in India. So I've always found that even though I struggled with Kiwi culture when I first moved to New Zealand, my written English was still very clear. And if I have things in writing, it's very easy to backtrack what I said, what they said, and to resolve arguments and conflicts. Another thing that I wanted to cover in career progression is learning team dynamics and organizational politics. We covered a little bit of this as part of like Kiwi culture, New Zealand English, but it is also very important to learn like how teams in New Zealand work, what kind of politics is there, whether it's healthy or it's unhealthy. This is something that I have taken a very long time to get used to. So which is why I thought it was very important to include this in this slide. A lot of people do not progress in their career fast enough or at appropriate times because they failed or they are not very clear on how the team works or how the organizational politics works. I know there's been speakers before me in this group who have talked about politics or organizational politics. So yeah, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time there. Relationship building and networking is always very important. But again, like I said, there is so much advice on relationship building and networking, but relationship building is very hard when English is not your first language, because to be able to build relationship with someone, to have a meaningful relationship with someone, or to be able to have someone in your network, you need language so that you can understand each other very clear. So I wanted to highlight that, yes, relationship building and networking is going to be harder for the first few years while you're trying to get fluent in English or you're trying to learn Kiwi culture, but do not underestimate that. One-on-one relationship with people goes a very, very long way. I am neurodiverse, so I do not believe in surface level relationships. I'm always into like deep, meaningful conversations with people. So Kiwi way of getting drunk at a bar is usually not my way. Also, I am Indian. Getting drunk at a bar is something that I did not grow up with. Like, that's not how we socialize in India. So that has always been very foreign culture for me. So for me, one way that I build relationships is by working with people on certain projects outside my work. So as part of NZ Tech Rally, as part of organizing my tech conferences, I work with people one-on-one. I've been working with Lynn as part of presenting tonight. So now Lynn and I have a really good relationship. So that's just an example of how you build relationship. Find projects that you can work with people on and go from there. One advice that I will give on networking is that adding someone on LinkedIn is just not networking. Networking, again, is about how you can be of help to someone else. I always lead with, when I'm trying to build a relationship or network with someone, stranger, like I've never met them before, I always think about how I can help you so that I can create that goodwill now, that in future, when I need your help, you will be able to help me. The other thing under career progression that has held me back is learning to lead in New Zealand culture. Now, New Zealand culture is very different from American culture or from Japanese culture. In my case, because of my subconscious program, because I was born and raised in India and I was there for 25 years, my way of leading was very Indian. Indian way of leading is more authoritative, because India is more of a hierarchy, very, very rigid constructs, whereas New Zealand, they don't really care about hierarchy. New Zealand structures are usually very flat. So when I first became a team lead, I was leading my team in my Indian way, quite unconscious of the fact that will not work here. And I obviously ended up in trouble. So I had to learn the hard way to learn in New Zealand. And again, this goes back to learning about Kiwi culture, how Kiwis think, how leadership works in Kiwi culture, how learning more about the team dynamics and organization politics. So that all contributes to your understanding of learning how to lead in New Zealand culture and how it is different from the culture that you come from. Culture fit and versus culture ed. This is a very cool topic that I've heard several times about. I've heard several other speakers talk at other conferences talk about culture fit and culture ed. You would have heard of team fit, and that is what is culture fit is. Culture ed might be new to you. The way I think about culture fit and culture ed is that when you're applying for that job or when you're going for that new promotion, a lot of times you will be denied, saying that you are not a good culture fit or you're not good at team fit. Has happened to me, happens to so many people, whether you're a migrant or not. One of my strategies now is that because I know who I am, I always lead with my identity, which is why telling people what my identity is, who I am as a human, is very important to me. Because once I've established my identity, it's very clear for me to show people that, okay, I'm not a culture fit, but I am a culture ed. So you can deny me on the basis of culture fit, but you can also give me the role on the basis of culture ed. I will be a great culture addition. So keeping that in mind. Discrimination and prejudice. Discrimination and prejudice happens. We have all faced it. It happens. It is very common. And I just wanted to include it over here that a lot of times you will be denied role because you're not a great team fit, you're too different, you don't speak English fast enough, and so many reasons. But the only way to beat is to A, become more aware of it, B, if you have been a victim of discrimination and prejudice because of your migrant background, because of your non-native English background, the best thing is to walk away from their employer. You do not want to work for employers who practice discrimination and prejudice. And unfortunately, if you are in a job where this is common, like I said before, have an exit plan, have a 6-month exit plan, 1-month exit plan to get out of that job and find a better employer. Now we are moving on to stage 4, systems thinking. So what is systems thinking? Actually, what is a system? So system is defined as a larger whole. And systems thinking is understanding how subsystems and things inside that system are held together. So for example, this community, the BA Practice Career Meetup, is a system, and there are several subsystems inside the system. A university like AUT or Vic University is a massive system, and there are so many systems inside it, which is why I wanted to introduce you to a new concept, which is called socio-technical systems, because all IT companies, all tech companies are socio-technical systems. And socio-technical systems have 4 main components, which is software, hardware, people, and community. And you can see, if you want to progress your career in a socio-technical system, it is very important not just to have technical skills, but also to understand how people think, what their motivations are, and how communities operate, and how we can build really, really nice communities. Now, you would say, Camy, why does it matter for migrants? I believe systems thinking matters for migrants because we did not grow up in this country. We did not design these systems, so we have no understanding. So if we do not spend time as part of our careers understanding how these systems work, we will eventually hit a career plateau. This is what happened to me. I was so focused on just my area of expertise, my niche skill, that when it came time for promotion, I just went in there thinking that, oh no, I'm the best at my job, so I'm going to get this next role. But when it comes to leadership positions are usually given to people who have highly specialized technical skills, but they also are really good generalists. They understand a lot of things and how business works and how processes within a business works. So which is why I believe it is important to learn and know about systems thinking. If you don't, this will hold you back in your career. A lot of people who are in the industry, like 10-year mark, 15-year mark, usually hit a career plateau. And I say that because I have been that person. And it was not until I started learning about systems thinking, how the company works, how the organization works, how the teams work, I couldn't get out of that plateau. Now, talking about communities, stage 5, the topmost stage in my career model is community building. Community is very, very important. If BA Career Meetup community didn't exist, I wouldn't be able to speak to you all today. Now, if you don't know what a community is, a community is about people and their interactions with one another. Community building is the art of fostering those connections, thus providing those people a safe space to feel connected to each other. Why it matters for migrants? It matters for migrants because we are so far away from our home countries. We are so far away from our families, trying to build a life for ourselves here. And it's important for us to support each other. For me, this is very personal. Again, it kind of hits home with my sister facing the same issues that I have faced, which is why I now contribute to so many communities. So yeah, I do feel it is important because especially when it comes to migrants, if you don't do it, who is going to do it? If you don't do it, then every other migrant from the same culture as you or from different culture as you is going to go through the same struggles. So which is why we care about community building and we want to contribute to community building. I also wanted to mention the concept of inclusive communities, because this is what my company, NZ Tech Rally, is all about. So what is an inclusive community? An inclusive community is a community where everyone, regardless of their gender orientation, their race and ethnicity, their neurodiversity, their disability, feels safe to speak up and feels welcome. I would highly encourage you all to look more into inclusive communities, and all the communities that you're participating in, try to make those communities more inclusive. If you want to know more about inclusive communities, come talk to me, because this is the bread and butter of NCET Tech Rally. This is what we do. All our conferences are highly inclusive. So please come talk to me. So a quick recap of Camy's Migrant Tech Evolution Career Model. Stage 1 to stage 5, we've explored all the 5 stages, and that leads me to the key takeaways for this presentation. Now, I have takeaways for all the categories. Now, if you're an individual contributor, if you do not know what an individual contributor means, an individual contributor is someone who is not in a leadership or a manager role at an organization. So if you are a migrant individual contributor, for example, you're a BI, you're a developer, you're a tester, I hope this presentation has provided you enough content, enough food for thought to reflect on your own journey, and has inspired you to pay it forward, mentor, find people from similar background as you, mentor them, help them, or find communities that help migrants. If you're a non-migrant individual contributor, I really appreciate you joining us tonight and increasing your level of awareness. I know it is hard to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand their challenges and their struggles, but that shows courage, and that for me are signs of someone who is highly aware. So I really appreciate you being here and trying to open yourselves to experiences that are someone else's. One of the ways you can support your migrant colleagues is by sponsoring your migrant colleagues for projects, for job opportunities, for promotions. Also, all of us, the teams in New Zealand tech companies now look very diverse. So we are all, anyone who is training to be a leader or a team leader or a team manager one day is going to lead a diverse team. So it is very important not only for migrants to understand how Kiwis work, it is also very important for Kiwis to understand how migrants think, what their challenges are. So the integration goes both ways. So I encourage non-migrant ICs, Kiwis, to also understand how migrants think and how they work and what their challenges are. Now, if you're a manager and leader, I have way too many takeaways for you. Inclusive work environment. I talk about what an inclusive community building looks like. So you can foster those inclusive work environment for your migrant employees by understanding the discrimination and prejudice that your migrant employees might face, by understanding the systemic biases that your migrant employees might face. One of the things that could have really helped me in my career was that if my employers had like a quick introduction to New Zealand English or quick introduction to colloquial Maori, I have never had that. So I had to do that myself. But I really hope, like, if this is something that organizations would actually consider providing as part of their mandatory training, this will help so many migrants to integrate Kiwi culture and to learn New Zealand English so much faster. Also, supporting communities within organization for migrants. And when it comes to middle management and senior leadership, it is really important to find opportunities to promote people from diverse backgrounds. Because again, role modeling is about we can't be what we can't see. So if we do not have any senior leaders or any middle managers who are migrants or from migrant background, it is going to be really hard for your migrant individual contributors to be able to raise their hand, speak up, or feel safe. Now, I know there are a lot of students as well joining us tonight, or people who are looking to move to tech. So for people in that category, I want to encourage you to find mentors and role models from similar background. When you're first starting out in a foreign country, it is really important to have that support of people who come from the exact same culture as you. Like, I am far more qualified to give advice to Indian migrants than I'm qualified to give advice to American migrants or Japanese migrants. So find people from your culture so that they can give you like the actual pragmatic advice that will really help you in the situation that you are in. Also, start learning New Zealand English. Start learning Maori now. Do not wait. Even if you're a non-native English speaker, do not think that you will learn English now and then 3 years later you will learn Maori. No, no, no. If you're already learning a second language, it is actually much more easier for you to learn a third language or a fourth language. So start learning Maori now. Just the basic colloquial Maori words should be more than enough. Support and grow migrant communities, and this goes back to kind of like paying it back, paying it forward. Even if you're a student, try to find migrant communities, share your experiences like I'm sharing mine. Do not wait 10 years like me, okay? Share your experiences. Like even if you're a student, come out and share your experiences. If you're trying to find a job in tech, I know it is really, really hard, but all I can say is persevere, find the right people, and practice your technical skills, practice your English speaking skills, practice public speaking. All of that goes a long way to help build your professional profile. Now, hope it doesn't sound very cheesy, but I thought it would be cool to end the presentation with an original quote from Camy. So this entire presentation, or me talking on this topic, has been an exercise in creating awareness and raising the awareness of migrant people, of non-migrant people, just so that we can make the New Zealand tech industry a bit more inclusive. So I don't know what I don't know. So by integrating the experiences of others, I illuminate the shadows of my own understanding. Credits to a lot of my immigrant friends who are not only Indian, they're also South American, Ukrainian, Hungarian, all over the world. I have been having coffee catch-ups, lunch catch-ups with all of my immigrant friends over the last 3 months, just seeking feedback, understanding what their challenges are. My co-founders at NZ Tech Rally, who are far more Kiwi than I am. And just by working with my co-founders at NZ Tech Rally, I am learning about New Zealand culture pretty much every day. And I am constantly in the mode of integrating language and culture integration. And that has helped me a lot. A big thank you to Lynn, who arranged this talk. Lynn and I first met in August last year. And since then, we've been trying to set this up. So it only took 9 months to do this talk. So thank you so much, Lynn, for all your hard work. Thank you to the BA Career Meetup crew. This is such a beautiful community. I've been watching all of your videos. I really wanted to give a shout out to a video that Greg and Sophie did a year ago on how to navigate as a New Zealand migrant. That is a really, really cool one. I hope this talk, along with that talk, becomes kind of like a really good go-to resource for a lot of migrants. Also, a quick thank you to Slides Carnival for the slide template, pixels, and flood icons. And that is me. Thank you very much. You can find me on LinkedIn as Camy Bhandari. It's a very unique name, very easy to find, or just type in my first name. If you enjoy watching amateur YouTube content from someone's backyard, I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Tech Engineering Lounge, so you can find me there as well. Thank you so much for listening to me, and hope I didn't bore you to sleep. Back to you, Len.
Thank you, Camy, for sharing this very comprehensive model that you summarized. I can see already there are many questions coming up from the Slido. Let's get into it. So, first one, could you elaborate more about salary and a promotion conversation?
Yes, I definitely can, because I've had 6 jobs over the last 10 years. So yes, I've got lots of experience. So the biggest problem with salary and promotion conversation is not having clear expectations, regardless of whether you are English speaking or not, or native English speaking. Everyone struggles with salary and promotion conversations. So I know every company has an air, and when that air kicks off, you should have conversations with your manager and set expectations. So let's say you are a BA right now, a junior BA, and you want to become a senior BA. Tell your direct report manager at the start of that performance air that your goal is to become a senior BA. And these are all the things that you are going to do. And now, can they provide you mentors within the organization that can help you get there? And along with that, every time when you have your monthly catch-ups with your reporting manager, make sure you bring that up and tell them what you are doing. A lot of times when people miss out on promotion is because they set a goal, but then they never chased it up. They never gave an update to their manager. So it's very important to give consistent and constant update to your reporting managers about what you are doing with that goal that you want to achieve. Same thing with salary. If you want a salary rise, tell your manager. Because the thing is, if you don't tell them, they do not know. They are not psychics, So I always encourage people to have very clear conversations. If you need help with this, if you feel like you don't feel confident enough or where to start, this is where role models and mentors come in. So if you have mentors, have this conversation with them. If you have family members who work in tech, have these conversations with them. This is what I kind of like the coaching I do with my mentees and with my sister around kind of like building solid expectations and then being able to convey those solid expectations to your reporting managers. I hope that helps.
Next question. How to get the first job in New Zealand? This might be a common issue that many people faced.
This is I think this is going to be
track.
This is the hardest question. I'm pretty sure, hands down, the hardest question. It is hard to find a job. I was very fortunate because I was kind of like a product of outsourcing. So my company from India sent me here to work for Westpac. So I was very, very fortunate to have a job and then move here. My sister wasn't that. My sister had to get like a $60,000 loan and then move to New Zealand. So yeah, it is a really hard situation. First job in New Zealand, again, competition is really, really intense because, like I said, majority of the New Zealand employers are small scale employers and they don't want to hire, they're not keen to hire graduates or fresh interns and train them. So what you can do is do work pro bono, do it for free. And I know it is hard, but that's the best way to build up your CV. The thing is, in your CV, it really doesn't matter whether you get paid for that job or not. So for example, if you want to be a BI, what you should do is find opportunities for free that allow you to become a BI. It could be that, like you could work with someone like NZ Tech Rally, like a startup for free. And at the end of So let's say you work with us 6 months as a BI. We can't pay you because we're a startup, we're a very small company, we're just bootstrapping. But what we can do is we can give you a reference on your CV, or that could go directly into your CV or your resume. And I think stuff like that goes a long way. And then when you go to apply for that job, your CV already stands out because now you have work experience, and no one cares whether it was paid or not. As long as you have relevant work experience, I think that counts. So I can see that is one way of kind of like standing out in the crowd. The competition at entry level is so hard. You need to find ways to stand out. Work experience, pro bono work experience, community building. I think New Zealand is a very community-based culture. So people who are involved in community building right at the earlier stages of their career, they are valued higher than people who are not. So you are much more likely to find a job if you are participating in community building. So those are two things that I have that could maybe help you with finding your first job in New Zealand.
Thank you. Next one, what kind of topics do you usually talk to Kiwis?
I just talk about myself.
Very much depending on your own interests as well, right?
I know. Because it is harder for anyone to give you a list of topics, what you would talk to them. But I think the best conversations are organic conversations. So for me, like Indian food, everyone loves Indian food. So I just start talking about Indian food. I also love cooking. So I just talk about how I love cooking and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, just organic conversations, I guess. Again, it's a very hard question, but that's what I do. I usually talk about food or culture, or what I did over the weekend. I think that's kind of like one of the best ways to start a conversation, especially if it's a Monday. What did you do over the weekend? And that kicks off the conversation. I know I understand why you're asking that, because again, Indian culture, especially for women, is like we don't talk, we don't speak up. Like from a very young age, we are told not to talk to anyone, especially men. So it is very, very hard for a lot of people who come from these drastically different culture to Western culture to find ways to talk to people. So I totally understand where the question is coming from, and I hope some of the tips that I gave that helps you.
And I think also, if we wanted to like as you mentioned in your presentation, you can lead the conversation. You can as like a culture add. So
Mm.
you can prepare something before you come into the office for and when you have a chance to have like a morning coffee with people, or during the morning tea time, and then you get started to lead the conversation as you wish. So yeah, you don't have to kind of like all fit into their conversation, but you can lead the conversation.
Yeah, I just quickly also want to add, like, if I know my colleague has kids, I always ask, how are your kids? And that's a really great conversation starter because people love talking about their kids. So hope that helps.
Right. How to reach out to mentor for the first time?
So I think a good way to reach out to mentor is so when you LinkedIn is a good way, but when you reach out to someone on LinkedIn that you've never met before, always add a note and be clear in your note why you are expecting to connect. Because again, people are busy. People who are established in their career, people who are building communities, who are building businesses, even if they're migrants, they are busy. So be very clear on why you are connecting. I usually have a rule that I do not connect with people without sending them a note on LinkedIn. If I connect with people on LinkedIn, I always add a note on why I'm connecting. And that kind of like shows a way that this person actually has put some conscious thought in creating and establishing a connection. So that could be one way. But also, this is where joining communities from similar background as you comes really, really handy. Go to conferences. There are several free conferences. Code Camp Wellington, where I spoke 2 weeks ago, is an absolutely free conference. It doesn't cost you. It was on a Saturday. So go to places like these, spot people from your similar culture, spot people where you want to be, and reach out to them on LinkedIn, reach out to them in person. If they share their email ID, write them an email. But the good thing is always, I think the main thing is always be very clear what you want. And if you want to go above and beyond, offer them help, offer them feedback. So for example, you could reach out to me on LinkedIn after this, and in your note, you can tell me all the things that you learned from me today. And you can also add feedback for me. Hey, Camy, I think it was great, but these are the things that I think could have made your presentation next level. I would really, really appreciate some sort of feedback like that. So, and this goes back to what I said in my presentation, always offer something first before you ask for something. So you just have to be a bit creative on what you are going to offer. It could just be a feedback on a blog that person wrote. Hope that helps.
Awesome. I'm just conscious about the time. Do you want to choose just one more question to answer from the list? So there's still quite a few.
I quite like the question of how did you balance your home country heritage while adapting and adopting to New Zealand culture? Did you feel you had to over assimilate to fit in? Yes, this is like, I think when Lynn asked the question at the start, like what is your biggest struggle? My biggest struggle is to not let go of my Indian heritage. People usually don't pick me for an Indian. They usually think I am South American or Hispanic, guess because I've got blonde highlights and I am lighter skin tone. But I am 100% Indian. My parents are Indian and I identify as of Indian ethnicity. And it's very important. I don't have kids yet. I want to have kids one day. And it's very, very important for me to pass on my culture to my kids. So while I am always learning how to integrate New Zealand culture, how to be more Kiwi, I'm always also very conscious of not letting go of my own culture. Language and food are my two big things when it comes to my culture, because Indian food, you can't beat it. And then language is something that I really, really look forward. So I constantly practice. When I talk to my parents, we talk in Hindi. When my sister comes down here, we talk in Hindi. So yeah, it is hard. It is a struggle for me right now, and especially for people with kids. I think that is one of the biggest challenges, because your kids are growing up and they're growing up as Kiwis, but you still want them to learn the language. Yeah, I think it is just a hard thing to balance. We all go through it, but I think as long as you're conscious of it and you practice your culture, I think it goes a long way. It goes a long way in role modeling it for your kids as well. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Camy. Thanks for sharing a very comprehensive model and your personal experience and your journey and your insights with us. As we reflect on those real-life examples, as just discussed, it's very clear that these challenges are not just theoretical, but deeply impactful on each our lives and our career paths. I hope you can all have some sort of takeaway tonight, because I think, yeah, everyone have different challenges and everyone has a different way to deal with it. I hope this the very comprehensive tips and strategies that Camy shared could help you in some way. And I believe this is going to be a continuous dialogue between us and between migrant workers and even like the migrant workers and the management team in your workplace. And remember, Camy also mentioned, like speak up, do not let your voice be silenced. So yeah, let's constantly seek out those action points and address those issues and barriers. And you can share your thoughts and experience with us on our channels and our LinkedIn. So yeah, do not let the conversation end here. Thank you all for all being part of this important conversation. So yeah, we would love to continue to hear from you. Please get in touch. And don't forget, we're gonna have the video posted on the YouTube channel as well. And just another announcement as well, as coming up next, we're gonna have a event in Auckland. This is gonna be a in-person event. The date is the 7th of May. I think it's about introducing the real world of business analyst. It's going to be in Otago Polytechnic Auckland campus, but there are going to be more detail about the event posted on Meetup, so keep in tune. Yeah, once again, thank you, Camy and everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, Monique, for your support as a co-host behind the scenes. I'll see you all next time. Thank you,
Thanks
and good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good
Thank you.
night. Bye.
See you.